Hello, everybody. It's me again, Nick, here on the Daily Surrender. I promised that I'd be delivering something every day to you. And here we are, day 2. I hope to continue this streak. And today, as far as an agenda for the discussion and the podcast, for those of you watching, you'll be able to see the slides and some of the stuff we'll be going over together. But if you're listening, you can just imagine that. We're going to talk about a few things. One, we're going to just do a quick recap on what we talked about yesterday, and we're going to go just another layer deeper just for 5 minutes. Just think of this as peeling the onion, because a lot of this is new information, and there's going to be a lot of you that resist it and that feel like it doesn't make sense and it can't make sense. And so I'm not trying to force you or trying to make you see it a certain way. I'm just putting out information so you can kind of come to your own conclusions. And we'll go just 5 minutes into that. And then I'm going to jump right into how this applies to different types of sales personalities and different types of sales strategies and approaches. So this will be a much shorter session today, but it's going to be packed with some really helpful stuff, and I hope you get a lot out of it. All right. So the first thing we had talked about in the meeting yesterday was that in the world of quantum physics, there is a science that basically says the building blocks of the universe are made up of these little particles that essentially are different levels of energetic vibrations and frequencies. So I gave some examples in the last episode citing that, even our emotions and thoughts and words carry with it a certain energy and a certain frequency. And I talked about the water crystal experiment where they had put a bunch of different words and phrases and even played certain music and put certain public figures onto these little petri dishes of water. And as they froze it and as they zoomed in and looked at the formations that were created, they could see that for the words that were more positive, things like thank you, love, and gratitude, harmony, it created these really beautiful crystals like little snowflakes. But for words and phrases like you disgust me, you fool, evil, they even did one for Adolf Hitler. It created all these weird looking shapes. So the point here is that everything carries a certain frequency of energy that either positively or negatively impacts things around it. So we are trying to be a little more thoughtful and aware at this point of what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and how that might be impacting other people around us, especially in our careers and in our jobs as sellers. We got to think about the real world implications of holding on to this kind of stuff and using it in our everyday life. So we also talked about the idea that these emotions, they have different energy levels. So there's a higher kind of vibrational frequency of energy associated with feelings like love and peace. And there's lower ones with feelings like apathy or guilt or insecurity or jealousy or fear. And if you kind of draw a line down the middle, right below courage, kind of between impatience and overwhelmment and courage, on the top half, this is called operating kind of in the sphere of power. And on the bottom half, it's operating in the sphere of force. And we'll talk about what that looks like from a selling perspective. But people who are in that sphere of force, it's like this thing that's bearing down, that is bringing things down and pulling down. And it's this idea that I'm going to force somebody to do something, where power is this kind of loving kindness influence. It's drawing somebody in versus forcing them to do something. And the point that I'm trying to make through these podcasts and through this content is that as people are more effective at seeing when they're in a force or a power kind of realm, the better they are at identifying that and saying, oh, I'm in one of those forceful states. I've got a lot of those emotions going through me right now and a lot of thoughts in that forceful state going through me right now. I'm going to surrender those and I'm going to kind of reshift and pivot here. That ability to surrender, which we will get to the specifics of how to do that. I promise you, we just need to understand this first. The ability to do that, this is my definition. It's surrendering is the ability to see those thoughts and emotions and those intents within ourselves, let them go, and accept a range of potential outcomes in any given scenario. So once we've gotten good at recognizing when we have those power or force emotions and thoughts associated with it, we can step back and effectively let our ego go, the thing that's telling us we need to survive and we need to make this happen, or the thing that's telling us they slighted us, they did this wrong to us, so I'm going to be angry at them. When we can let that go and we can accept that, hey, there's a variety of ways that this conversation can shake out. And I mentioned in the last episode that I had personal experiences with that, and I've heard plenty from others about when they do this well, things start shifting for them. When you start doing that, you will see more success through surrendering and doing that process than all of the other sales and self-help frameworks combined. Because you can follow the motions and do the sales frameworks, but if you're doing it from a place of fear of, oh crap, if I do this, it's going to mess up and blow up in my face, people sense that it's not going to be effective. You have to have the right mindset and attitude behind it. That's really all I'm getting to here. Okay. So the next kind of components here, and then we'll get into the specific examples, just going a little bit deeper into this idea of energy and vibrational frequencies and stuff like that, because this is new for people. I'm gonna break it down and start with some foundations just so that it can make a little more sense. Albert Einstein, he is famous for a lot of reasons, but he also talked about the idea that everything in the universe is energy. It's energy and vibration. And he was a scientist that dedicated his whole life to figuring out how energy worked and how we could control energy and its influence on us. He was one of the first pioneers that kind of talked about that everything vibrates at some kind of frequency and that there's energy in the universe. That's all space. Everything has energy within it. Nikola Tesla, he was also a really famous scientist, which the car company Tesla was named after. He has a famous quote where he said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Just like what we're doing right now. Okay, we're talking about everything around us in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And so he caught on to this long ago. He realized that, hey, there's something deeper here that if we can figure out, we can fundamentally change our quality of life. Now, I'm going to tie this to something that we're all familiar with. We've all heard music. You can hear my voice right now coming through your speaker or your headphones or your car stereo on Bluetooth, whatever it is. When I speak, there is literally a wave, a vibration that is coming out of my mouth. It's creating a tone. And when that vibration hits a special part inside of our ear, our brain perceives it as a tone, and then it connects it to, oh, that tone is this word, and that word means this, and it pieces together all these sentences. And since we've heard it since birth, we can piece together things without even having to think through all of it. But if that tone is too high or so low, then our ears can't even perceive it. But that doesn't mean that the vibrations aren't there. Just like this whole conversation around energy, just because we can't see it or we maybe aren't familiar with it before, doesn't mean it's not there. Now, if you think about it, all sound is, so my voice right now, all it is, it's nothing more than just a vibration of molecules of air. Like it's just a bunch of air that's vibrating a certain way that creates this sound. And it's not just air. Like it can resonate and happen underwater. Like when a whale sings, you can hear it underwater, even though there's not air. Or some people, I don't know if you've seen a tuning fork, but it's like this metal horseshoe looking thing. And if you hit it, it makes a sound. It goes bong. And if you like were to take it and put it on your head, you could literally hear that sound just kind of like going through your body. It's a little weird. If you haven't tried it before, it's pretty cool. So it's not just with air that these vibration of molecules to make sound happen. It can literally happen in any way, shape, or form. They're all just floating around. So hearing sound is simply a way for us to see and experience that vibration that's out there floating around. We also see every day that light is vibration. It just vibrates a whole lot faster than sound, but we're only able to see with our eyes 7 visible colors. You can see red, orange, green, blue, yellow, indigo, and violet. And then anything that's vibrating below that or above that, that's where it's like gamma rays and, you know, different types of light energy that we just can't see with the naked eye. So it's kind of cool when you think about it. It's like, oh, this desk is brown or that tree is green because it's reflecting at that vibrational frequency of the color green. Like when I thought about that the first time, it kind of blew my mind. I was like, wait, how does paint work? Like when they make the color brown paint, they're literally just making molecules into this kind of liquid thing that vibrates at the color brown, so that when light hits it, it reflects that frequency off, and then our eyes see it and say, oh, that color's brown. I don't know if that blows anybody else's mind, but I just had thought about that like years ago, and it kind of took the magic out of a lot of things for me. but it makes sense, because when it's dark in the room, it's not like you see colors on the wall. It's not like you see the rainbow painting on your wall or anything like that. It's only when you turn on the light that the rays reflect off of it and those vibrations come off, so you can actually perceive the color there. So that is my little 5-minute spiel that I said I'd go into about this, just to kind of keep you thinking about energy and frequencies and vibration. And now we're going to talk really quick about, we're going to come back to the emotional states and the levels of energy associated with each of these. And we had talked about that all the way down on the bottom with shame. You got like at a level 20. And if you go all the way up to the scale around 700, 800, 900, 1,000, you're like at enlightenment, and you have this like consciousness as if you were God, like you just know and understand everything. It's like this out of body type of experience that very few people get to in this life. And within this scale, I like to break it up into 3 areas, because really, when we think about what we consciously are aware of, there's really like 3 main areas that we can sort of see whether we're in it or not. And these 3 levels of consciousness are, you've got inertia or inert, you've got energetic, and you've got peaceful. And I'm going to talk about how each of these relate to decision-making and the way that we sell, and kind of give you some examples of how each of them work. So first, inert consciousness. This is connected with apathy, grief, fear. We focus on our own thoughts versus like a decision at hand. We're really focused in like, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure, I don't think I can. it really makes it difficult for us to arrive at any decision. With a prospect, usually this leads to some kind of stalled decision making because they're just not sure if they should really dedicate time to it. It's just, that's the person you don't want to be with in a sales cycle. You don't want to be with the person who's inert. Energetic, these types of people in this state of consciousness, it's where we have a lot of desire, we have anger, we've got pride. We have some positive thoughts that flow through with the negative feelings. Just because you have a negative feeling doesn't mean you can't have a positive thought with it. Like if you think sometimes when you're angry, that will actually impel you to do something about it. Not necessarily seek out revenge, but you're going to say, oh man, I'm so mad that I broke my diet for that stupid Rice Krispies. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sit down right now. I'm going to write out this new plan that I'm going to do tomorrow, and I'm going to do it well. And I'm going to call my friend and have them be my accountability partner. And I'm going to do it tomorrow. So like you can still have those kind of like optimistic thoughts, but it's coming from that place of anger. So sometimes this person, as it reflects externally, is seen as the go-getter. This is the one that's trying to prove themselves. They are usually making like impulsive or compulsive decisions. Their whole belief is, I need to get something for myself. So personal self-gain is usually the primary motivating factor. So these are the ones where if you dangle a carrot in front of them and say, hey, the sales spiff this month is you're going to get a trip somewhere, you're going to get like $2,000 or whatever it is. That's really motivating for these kind of people. Now, they usually operate from a place of like win-lose type of decision making. So they're really trying to figure out like, how am I going to win and gain success? And I don't really care if the other person wins. If they do, great. It's secondary though. And we'll go a little bit more into this. But I'm going to just kind of jump over to peaceful. Peaceful is somebody who they have courage. They are accepting, like they accept life as it is. They accept circumstances as they are. They're proactive. They love. They are, because they're not holding on to all the negative energy, they have so much more energy and availability to concentrate completely in the moment and on a situation and all the relevant details. And in that state of mind, because they don't have worry, they're able to really concentrate. And because they're able to concentrate so well on the facts and what's in front of them, they are able to, what seems like, have tons of creative ideas, these creative win-win opportunities. And you'll see this with like big projects that happen that are leading to the greater good of society. You'll find a lot of people that are in this kind of peaceful state because they're really just focused on how do we find a solution where everybody gains and no one loses. That ego isn't there saying, but I need to put my stamp on it because I want to be seen as the person that thought of all this and I want to gain something from it. They're really just pure in that aspect. So one way we can look at these three things, the inert, energetic, and peaceful kind of levels of consciousness, is when we look at a solution and we don't think there is a win-win, then we know that somewhere lurking under the surface, there's something that needs to be released. There's some emotional thing we're holding on to that's keeping us from getting to that state. Now, here's a few specific sales examples. Okay, so we're going to go back to inert. Again, apathy, grief, fear. A lot of these types of sellers and potential buyers and customers, they do as they're told. They're scared and afraid of the potential rejection that comes from venturing out on their own. This is not your champion, okay? This is not the person you want to have take your product inside the company and try to sell it for you, because most likely they won't. And they won't even give you a referral to anybody else because they're just like in their own little bubble and they're just stuck there, really. Salespeople often in this state are told by their prospects that they're not interested in their products right now. And then the seller will usually follow that with thoughts of, oh, they don't want my product right now. Nobody likes this solution. Why am I even here selling it? It's a terrible product. And they get really down on themselves and just like down on the world. The very nature of doing any type of sales activity exposes a person in this level of consciousness to rejection and disappointment. And this makes it really hard for them to stick around in this career. So usually they don't last very long, unless they have a really good manager or a really good mentor with them that's kind of buoying them up along the way and essentially selling on their behalf and compensating for their inertness. They will usually burn out pretty quickly. Energetic. Let me go into this a little bit. So energetic comes across as like really talkative. Like I'm a little Mr. Professor. I've got all the answers. Like day one, I don't want to say I don't have the answer. I'm going to just go in and say, oh yeah, we can do that. And oh yeah, like I'm just going to make stuff up on the fly. They don't want to be seen as somebody that doesn't have it all together. They're very adamant about sharing everything. And oftentimes that comes across as not listening or asking questions. And they're really all about just pushing stuff on somebody because they think if I push enough and if I get creative enough to like help them see why they should be buying with me and my company, then I'm going to win. I have a good shot of winning. And again, they're all focused on that self-gain. They really want to show off and say, look at me. I did this cool thing, highlight me in our next all hands meeting because I did this thing. I kind of pushed the limits and I got a deal from it. They really just want somebody to buy from them because it'll get them a good commission. Like that's really what it boils down to. Now, we're not saying this is a bad place to be in because people see decent success here. You'll see kind of that lone wolf seller, or that person that's like really energetic. You don't know where it's coming from, but now you do. You know a little bit more about where this person's coming from. And they seem to have success, but it is so draining and exhausting. So these people will normally have like a pretty good stint in a sales career, but eventually they'll get out of it because they just can't keep going after it because eventually it takes its toll on them. And lastly, this is the peaceful level of consciousness. So salespeople and customers at this level, they're able to listen carefully to other people. They can place the sale in the context of what's beneficial to the buyer rather than to the seller. And they have what feels like boundless creativity. They are never at a loss for creative ideas as to how to produce sales or how to convert problems to solutions. So this level also, they'll see customers and prospects become friends. They'll become loyal. You'll see somebody in your organization where it just seems like all the prospects and all the customers just love talking with them. They love engaging with them. And it really boils down to like, it's not just their personality or it's not just the way they talk on the phone or anything like that. People can sense they're at this peaceful level and they're not being pushed, and it kind of draws them in. It attracts them to this person. So they're really focused on detaching from the outcome. They're not saying, oh, I need this for myself. I need this for my company. I need to do it. I'm going to pull and prod as much as I can to get it. They would love that, but they're also focused on, I want to do the right thing. I want to make this a win-win. And if it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, okay, we'll move on. So they will also, if they like encounter something that seems like an impossible situation, like there's no way we could fix this, they're the type of person that can just quickly turn it into a positive experience. There's actually a story about this. So there's a lady that was working in an art gallery, and sales were dismal. They were really slow. They hadn't had anything in weeks. And she did everything to try to encourage the sales. She tried all of her sales techniques whenever somebody came in. She had this like vision board in the back office. She used written affirmations. She would look at the mirror every morning and say good things to herself. And she kind of tried to put out these positive vibes, but nothing was happening. And eventually she felt so overcome and overwhelmed by the fact that I'm doing all this stuff and nothing's working, that eventually she got to that place of, I just can't do this anymore. I can't, like, I'm just flawed. I can't do it. It's not going to work. And eventually that led to her surrendering and letting go. She let go of all that inner trying and efforting and everything that she was doing daily to try and make this sale happen. And she just dropped it. And she could just instantly feel that feeling of relief. Like, oh, good. I don't have to even focus on that anymore. She woke up the next morning. The stuff was just gone. She still felt at peace. She showed up to work with this like new peaceful energy about her. Within an hour, she had sold 2 sculptures. Like some of their best artwork, she had sold 2 of them already after this 3-week drought. And ironically, the sculptures were titled Letting Go. So I thought that was too good not to share. But I had shared this other example on the previous call. I'll give you a little more context too. So it was the insurance agents that sold more than the other insurance agents, if you remember that. So there's a partner of a large top 4 accounting firm. Just think of them in your head and pick one and you'll probably be right. He decided that after learning this process of surrendering, he said, I'm going to go out on my own, do some consulting and share this with other companies. And he found, again, a top 50, Fortune 50 insurance company. He started working with their agents, and he had a control group and this test group. And as he talked to them about the ability to concentrate on one thing at a time without letting our other thoughts or negative feelings interfere, just being able to concentrate on one thing and kind of staying in this peaceful level of consciousness, just by doing that alone, they saw a 33% growth over the control group when it came to sales of policies in this insurance company. And if you think about it, and I'll demonstrate this as we go throughout the podcast and as I get guests on the show, most successful people in the world are those that are able to hold in mind the highest good of everybody around them and everybody concerned, including themselves, for a long, prolonged period of time. They're at peace with themselves, which allows them to be supportive of the success of others. They don't seek happiness through their job. They know that happiness is a byproduct of doing what they love. And it's the idea that I'm contributing to the lives of other people and that makes me feel happy. They're willing to let go of this like willfulness and this attachment to like getting something specifically. And those kind of people, you follow them around and you're like, what made you successful? How did you do it? And they'll share like tactical ideas and things like that. But many people aren't even aware that they're just in that mindset, and that's helping them get what they're seeking. So I have 2 questions. Leaders, after hearing about these 3 levels of consciousness, what kind of environment in your business are you encouraging or creating? Are you creating a space that breeds inert reps or team members? Are you creating a space that creates a lot of energy and buzz and a lot of, yeah, let's get this done, which most companies kind of ebb and flow between inert and energetic. And most sales organizations tend to be more energetic in that level. So just think about that. Are you creating this kind of peaceful, let's detach from the outcome, let's get rid of the negative stuff type of environment, or is it on the opposite side of the spectrum? And then sellers, where do you typically find yourself? So I'm going to share some specific examples of what inert, energetic, and peaceful sellers sound like, what like the outreach looks like and feels like. And I'm not going to share all the stuff I have right now. I'll share a few examples and then I can share more in the future. But this can help you understand where you maybe fall and what you can maybe change to kind of level up your level of consciousness that you're in right now. So inert examples. Again, as I mentioned, most companies fluctuate between like being in an inert spot and an energetic spot. So most marketing content is developed from this point of view. It's kind of geared around, let's pull people in, let's use fear, let's use, hey, you're going to gain a lot. You're going to be the hero here. Let's like really play up that ego, that energetic level of consciousness of our prospects to get them to come to us. And unless your marketing team has a really good content strategy that's really just the kind of, hey, we're going to put out valuable stuff that people will just naturally gravitate towards. We're not going to have paywalls. We're not going to have sign-up sheets. Like eventually they'll just come to us and, you know, it'll be that kind of peaceful level of attraction. Most companies don't have that. So chances are your reps are going to be throwing people into these canned email sequences. They're going to be sticking to the cold call scripts without taking a breath between sentences because they just have this crippling anxiety and fear. And ultimately, as I mentioned, these sellers don't last very long in the profession. Unless they get that manager that's energetic or higher, they will burn out quickly. Usually they will only have success with lots of handholding from peers and management. And that's going to be the way that they'll win deals. But again, these types of sellers are very much like, I'm not going to go outside of the lines. I'm just going to take what I'm given and go. And if it doesn't work, I have something to blame it on. Versus if I were to try to do something on my own, it would be too much for me to blame myself and take that responsibility on my own. Energetic. This is the way I thought of this is because I've primarily been energetic for a lot of my sales career and outside of sales. Like that's been my quote unquote personality. And this is kind of like the challenger sales methodology gone wrong a bit. It's a bit more arrogant. It's not really focused on a true solution. It's just focused on how am I going to get this person to buy? So there's some more, we'll call it like the generic sleazy sales tactics. It's like kind of getting people to commit to something that they're not really committed to because you present it in a way that they would feel bad if they said no, or they feel like they have to say yes to just kind of get you off their back. And then you wonder, why'd they ghost me or why aren't they interested anymore? Sometimes this looks like the lone wolf in the sales organization, but also it's seen as the, hey, look what I'm doing. Put me in the spotlight. These reps love being seen as innovative and pushing the envelope. They, as I mentioned before, they also do get wins and they are quote unquote successful because even though their energy isn't super high, it's still common that fear and anger that they kind of promote in others, it can motivate people to at least do something. So you'll see a customer or prospect doing something because they're getting that vibe from this seller and they'll take some kind of action versus the inert. It's sort of stuck in a place of inactionability. Now, peaceful. I'm going to give some more detailed examples here with peaceful because I want to over-index on this part because I want everybody to be here. So these salespeople, again, they are able to listen carefully to others. They can place the sale in the context of what's beneficial to the buyer rather than the seller. They can let go and detach from the outcome. and just purely focus on, hey, what's going to be the best for this person? And again, you'll see customers and prospects love talking to this person because they're not feeling that pushiness. They're feeling something different. And the way they question, the way they talk, everything about it is just night and day to the inert or the energetic seller. So let me share, let's see. Okay, let me share a couple of examples. So I'm going to use like a cold call example, an email example, discovery, during like a sales conversation, just some stuff you might hear from somebody who's more at this like peaceful level. So cold call, this will be the type of call that if I was a prospect, I would be interested to engage more. I'd be interested to say, okay, tell me a little bit more. Like, what's that about? Now, you can get that with an energetic seller, but with a peaceful seller, it sounds a little bit different. It might sound something like this. Say, ring, ring, they pick up. You say, hey, John, or is that John? They'd say, yeah. And you'd say, hey, this is Nick. To be upfront, we don't know each other. This is a sales call. So you could either hang up now or give me 20 seconds and see if it's something you want to talk about. They say, no, time's not good right now. I got to go. Okay. They hang up, you part ways. Or they say, okay, yeah, what do you got, Nick? And as you talk, it's not about you and it's not necessarily about them. It's just you're putting something out there that the two of you are sort of considering together. That's the mindset you need to have. And you say, John, usually when I'm talking with people in your space, like one of my clients is cite some peer of theirs. You'd say, I've been hearing these three things as challenges. One, blah, blah, blah. Two, Three, Now, John, you're probably going to tell me that none of those are problems for you. I love that statement because it naturally makes the other person want to say something like, well, no, actually, yeah, one of those is a problem for me. And so it's an interesting statement to make. You can try it out, but I've seen success with it where you just say, now you're probably going to tell me none of those are a problem for you, right, John? And you could even say it like maybe a little sarcastically and they kind of get your vibe. They'll respond a couple ways. One way they'll just say, okay, keep going. I'm listening because they get what you're doing. The second way would be, they'll instantly disqualify themselves. They'll say, you know what? I'm not the right person to talk to about this. You need to talk to so-and-so. Or the third one is they'll hone in on one of those and they'll say, actually, no, we are struggling with this right now. We're working with a consultant to do this or that. We just implemented a solution to look at this. And they'll kind of open up and share some things with you. And then from there, I like to say something to the effect of, like, have you given up on trying to fix this? Or I'll say, could you kind of wave a magic wand and tell me which one you get rid of entirely? And then you can hone in on that and say, what have you done? Or what are you doing right now to fix it? And depending on their tone of voice, you could say, it sounds like you've maybe given up on trying to approach this. You can kind of pressure test a little bit to see how interested or how important it is to them. And then from there, you can just lay out the fact that, what if I told you that I'm working on that problem with clients every day and I can't guarantee that we would get you the same type of results that they're getting, but is that something that you would be opposed to talking about? And that kind of dialogue and conversation as like a cold outreach phone call goes a long way. And again, it's all about the intention and attitude behind it and emotions behind it. So there's lots of ways to do it. That's just one that I've done and found success with. An email, example of somebody who's in this like peaceful state of consciousness, there's companies like Lavender that actually encourage this kind of outreach. And there's frameworks around like, hey, I'm going to observe something about this person and what they do. I'm going to personalize it. I'm going to do like a subtle call to action, like, hey, interested to learn more? Or would there be anything keeping you from having a quick chat? Or just sending them something and saying, hey, I thought of you. This article resonated because of XYZ. Is that something you're doing today? And just kind of leave it there with them. That's the kind of email outreach that you typically see from these peaceful sales reps. And then two more are during discovery and just sales conversations in general. So during an initial call, the way that I see this come across from a peaceful perspective is the seller is very clear and fair in their upfront contract with the person on the phone call. They're focused on an objective or a potential outcome. But the real purpose of the discussion is to see if the seller or the buyer qualify each other out of the conversation. That's really it. It's just like, is this something we should talk about or not? It's not, oh my gosh, I need to get that next event on the calendar because if I don't, my metric's going to be down and then I'm going to go on a PIP and my manager's going to have to get involved in everything and I don't want them breathing down my neck. That's not where it's coming from. It's like this nonchalant, hey, I'm going to detach from the outcome. If it seems like a good fit, let's pursue it. If not, let's not. So when I get on a call, I'll calmly do something like this. I'll say, John, thank you for getting on the call today. I see we have the 30-minute slot that you agreed to. Is that still okay for you? We'll say, yeah, or I need to end a little bit early. Okay, great. Thanks for letting me know. Now, I just want to tell you up front that we're not for everybody. Sometimes companies are just not in the right place to adopt the solutions that we provide. And sometimes you just have a totally different set of problems that you're going after, and it's not worth your time or my time to look at our solution. So I want to make sure that you're comfortable telling me no today. That anytime you feel like this isn't up your alley, are you okay telling me no? And they might laugh and be like, yeah, I'm fine. Thanks. I appreciate you being transparent about that. And you say, okay, good. Next thing is, because I'm curious about whether our solution will be a fit for you, I'm probably going to ask you a lot of questions today. Some of them might be tough or challenging, or maybe even uncomfortable, but you can always say no. If you don't want to answer it, that's fine by me. But are you okay with that? And again, they might, depending on the personality, they might laugh at it, or they might just say, yeah, sure, that's fine. And then you would follow up and just say, based on your answers to those questions, would you be upset if I told you no today? So we're kind of establishing that level playing ground of, hey, you can tell me no if something's not right. If I ask you questions and you answer back and it seems like it's a no, are you okay if I tell you no? You're on a similar playing field. And then at the end, you could just say, now, last thing, if we both haven't said no by the end of the conversation, do you think it's fair if we set aside a few minutes to agree on how we would like to move forward? Like every time you do that, you're setting a totally different tone for the conversation. And what I love about it is if you ever start feeling scared or nervous or desperate, like you start kind of shifting from that peaceful place to like energetic or inert, you can kind of break it up by saying, John, you know how I said I was going to maybe ask some uncomfortable questions? Can I use one of those right now? And you can kind of jokingly and lightheartedly come back to it and say, I'm getting the feeling that it's that, am I understanding that right? Or, you know, you could kind of use it to diffuse whatever the fear that's going on or anxiety that's being created in the conversation. And so I really like that one. Now, the last technique that, and kind of the feeling that I get in peaceful examples, is during the sales conversation. Actually, there's two. During the sales conversation, it's becoming a master at Socratic questioning without being an interrogator. So this sounds like John, the prospect, saying, hey, do you work with any international or global customers? And me saying, ooh, that's a great question. When you say international or global, are you thinking of a specific size of company? So it's all about these clarifying questions without sounding like you're an interrogator. So think of just being this curious little kid that's just trying to ask it in not an annoying kid way of like, Mom, what time it is? Mom, what time is it? Mom, what time is it? You're doing it in a way where it's kind of carrying on the conversation, and where you're taking what they're saying, you're listening to it, you're actually hearing it, and you're kind of putting that into a subsequent set of questions. That's something that I see working really well in these conversations. And then the last thing is, if you're able to get prospects to help you see why you're wrong or why they should be your customer, you're opening up this dialogue of like humility, and just, again, encouraging the fact of like, it doesn't need to be a certain way. It doesn't need to be right or wrong. It doesn't need to be this specific outcome. And one way to prompt that is you could say, should I tell you the reasons why customers don't work with us even when they want to? And more often than not, they'll say, sure. Like, what is it? They want to know. So you'll say, well, the reason why customers don't work with us even when they want to is, one, we're pretty expensive. We're more expensive than competitors. There's reasons for that, but we're just more expensive. Two, we take a long time to implement. Usually it's 6 to 12 months. And so people get impatient. They want to see stuff right away, but this is like a 5-year project. And then three, we only have a high success rate with companies that we implement with when there's executive buy-in. Like, you need to have a C-level person who's backing this project, who's willing to talk and engage with us on a quarterly basis. And those are some of the main reasons why customers don't work with us even when they want to. So, Mr. Prospect or Mrs. Prospect, let's pretend we should and could work together. Are any of those going to be reasons why we couldn't, even if you wanted to? And then you just sit back and listen, because they will either defend themselves and say, well, expensiveness, that doesn't matter because we got X amount of budget and we should be fine. Or, yeah, we take a long time implementing stuff anyways, so 6 to 12 months is pretty normal for us. And, oh yeah, my executive sponsor, we already have one in place. They're super good. They've had really great projects go before. And yeah, we'll be fine there. Or it'll be the opposite. They'll say, oh yeah, expensive. Well, we only have this kind of budget. Does that match what you guys do? Or they'll say, oh, long to implement. Yeah, we were thinking this would be done like in 3 months. Can you help me understand why it's 6 to 12 months? So it leads to a really good dialogue after those kind of questions. So there you have it. Those are the kind of 3 levels of consciousness, how those can pan out in the real world, and especially with sellers and with their customers and prospects. The next conversation we have will be the practice of surrendering. So you don't want to miss it. We will go specifically into how to do it, what it looks like and feels like in different situations, and you don't want to miss it. If you do, it's recorded, so you can always come back to it. So don't worry about that. But I am so glad you came and listened today and heard this presentation and joined the conversation. Looking forward to hear back and hear any feedback you have, good, bad, indifferent. And thank you. I can just thank you for your time. Bye-bye.